But I really do want to just say thank you guys so much. Without you guys watching, I wouldn't have made it to 1 year. I wouldn't have made it to 13,000 subscribers, which is unbelievable to me. It's amazing. And my videos have gotten so many views, even some of my older videos that are terrible to watch. I'm sorry. But thank you guys so much for being here. It makes it so worth it. And now that I've started crying, I'm just going to cry through the whole video because that's what happens. Can't sit here and cry when you're making cupcakes. Cupcakes are happy. So let's be happy and make my cupcakes. Okay, so now that my oven is well past preheated and all of my ingredients are well past room temperature, today's recipe is vanilla cupcakes with vanilla buttercream. And so simple, but you can't go wrong with a vanilla cupcake. And if you wanted to, you could put nuts or something in here or even add in some fruit. It's really versatile. If you know me, which some of you do, vanilla is one of my favorite flavors to begin with, and which is why I chose to celebrate my 1 year anniversary here on YouTube with vanilla cupcakes. Gluten free, of course. So first thing we're going to do is start on the buttercream. And I've showed you this buttercream. It's very similar to some other buttercreams. If you have a favorite vanilla frosting, use that. But this one is just one of my favorites. So what we need to do first, in my saucepan here, I have 3 eggs. And I've got 3/4 of a cup of honey. And we're going to mix this until it's really light and fluffy. And then we'll cook it for a few minutes till it's really thick. So just mix your honey and your eggs until they're light and fluffy. This may take about 5 minutes or so. Once I get the honey mixed in with the eggs, I usually tilt my pan Once your eggs and your honey are light and fluffy and doubled in volume, and they'll look really foamy and frothy, that's exactly what you want it to be. I just give it a good stir. And then over medium heat, we're going to cook and stir this constantly until it gets really thick. You could use a whisk, but I find a spatula is best to scrape the bottom of the pan and make sure it's not burning. And what you're looking for is for a lot of that foam to settle down and it will get really thick. I didn't get a hot pad, so I'll just use my towel. So turn off your heat and just keep stirring it. And it will get a little bit thicker as it cools as well. And I talked about this vanilla bean paste before. I'll put a link below. But we want 1 teaspoon of this vanilla bean paste stirred into our kind of egg and honey mixture. But make sure to get all of this off of here. You could just use a regular vanilla if you don't have any vanilla bean paste as well. Or you could have put a vanilla bean in here. And just give this a really good stir. If you were using a vanilla bean, you would scrape out the seeds and throw the seeds and the whole pod in this mixture and cook it. And then when you're ready to cool it off, you would just remove the pod. And then I have a really shallow little casserole dish here that I pour my mixture into. If you were making this with sugar, it would be a little bit lighter in color. The honey does turn it a little bit darker of a color, but it's fine. And then I just level it out. It doesn't really matter, but you can see it's not even filling this up, maybe just 1/4 of the way, but I like how shallow it is. It really does help it to cool off faster. And then I'm going to get a cooling rack and just leave it to cool over there, and then I'll put it in the fridge when it's a little bit more room temperature. And you can make that the day before. In fact, a lot of times I do. I'll make it the day before, and then it's nice and chilled for when I'm ready to use it. So I've got my stand mixer here. You could do this with a hand mixer, but I'm going to be mixing the butter for about 5 minutes, give or take a little bit. And you could do that with a hand mixer. And then in my bowl, I've got 10 tablespoons of butter. And I don't know if you saw that, it is sliding around a little bit. You don't want it melted, but you want it soft enough to whip up. And before I get that started whipping, so I'm just going to mix my dry ingredients together first. And then I've got my other ingredients here too. I've got 2/3 of a cup of honey. We'll use some more vanilla bean paste in the batter. And then I have 6 eggs and 3/4 of a cup of milk. Or you could do heavy cream or half and half, whatever you've got. And then I've got 2 cups of my gluten-free flour, 2½ teaspoons of baking powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. You could whisk this together if you want to, but this spoon will be fine. And this will make about 24 cupcakes. So I've got my cupcake pans ready. I don't have any liners in my cupcake tins. I've noticed with this recipe, for some reason, it sticks to the papers a little bit. Not a lot, and then once they're cooled off and put in the fridge, they don't stick as much to the liners, but I'm not happy with the way they stick to the papers. And then I feel like you're losing part of your cupcake to your paper. So I'm just gonna grease those. You could grease it with butter. I'll probably use a combination of butter and bacon grease. And if you haven't noticed by now, I love bacon. So I don't really care that my vanilla cupcake might taste like bacon. Which a long time ago I actually made maple bacon cupcakes. It was a really interesting experiment and I thought it was really good. And one of the interesting things is people either loved them or they hated them. Let me know. Let me know if you've ever put bacon in a cupcake before. So that is ready to go. I rinsed off my spatula and I'll just use that. So I'm gonna whip my butter on low speed to begin with, and then once it starts getting really kind of creamed together with itself, I'll turn the speed up to high and let it go for about 5 minutes. I want my butter to be really light and fluffy. After about 2 minutes, you can scrape the bowl down. And then keep going for about another 2 to 3 minutes. Using a stand mixer makes it so easy. While you're whipping your butter for 5 minutes, you can grease your cupcake pans. And you'll notice how different your butter looks. It's really pale and of course light and fluffy. So I scrape it down and then we're gonna whip in the honey or sugar if you're using sugar. And then I have 2/3 of a cup of honey. And again, I'll put the equivalents to sugar in the description box. So once you get your honey in there, we're going to whip this for about another 2 minutes. Scrape down your bowl. We're going to start mixing in our eggs one at a time, mixing well after each egg. And it's going to look really chunky and separated, but just keep going. Egg number 3. I'm going to scrape off my paddle and the bowl just to make sure it's all getting mixed in. Butter will be on the bottom and kind of the sides. Egg number 4. Number 5. And number 6. And now for 1½ teaspoons of vanilla bean paste. And give this a really good mix. and it looks really soupy, and that is just fine. It will come together when we add in the flour. I like to take it off of the mixer just so I can really get a good scrape around it without having to work around the paddle. So now we're going to start adding in our dry ingredients and alternating with our milk and go back and forth, probably in about thirds for the flour. So just on low speed to begin with so you don't splatter flour everywhere. And then about half of the milk. And we'll go a little bit more flour. And the rest of our milk. And the last of our flour. And then I'm going to turn the speed up to about medium-high just to make sure it's all mixed in. And I'm going to scrape the bowl. I'm actually going to scrape off the paddle first. And then I give it a really good scrape, make sure all of that flour got mixed in, and make sure there's nothing hanging out on the bottom. And then with my same spoon, I feel like it's only going to make 12 cupcakes instead of 24. And then I usually go just a little bit in each one. And I'm going to fill these about 3/4 of the way full. Do you ever have a recipe where you think it makes a certain amount and it's not written down, and then you guess and you're wrong? I did that with one of my muffin recipes where I thought it only made 12 and it ended up making 16. This recipe, for some reason I had it in my head, it made 24, but it only makes 12. So 12 cupcakes, and I have a second pan ready and greased, so I might just have to make something else. So these will go in the oven for about 20 to 25 minutes. I'll check them in about 20 minutes and see what we've got. And that went for about 24 minutes or so in my oven. And one of the things that you'll notice, even though it looks like you've evenly distributed all of your batter, clearly I did not. I've got some really big cupcakes and some smaller-ish cupcakes. But that's okay. So I've got my stand mixer. I washed my bowl and my paddle attachment and my spatula just so they're ready for the buttercream. I put the egg and honey mixture in the fridge so it can cool off. And then once these have been cooled off for about 10 minutes, I'll take these out and let them cool off completely. I'll just use my kitchen towel again. But my cupcakes have been cooling for about 10 minutes. And then I just have a little offset spatula here that I'm just going to lightly go around the cupcakes, and hopefully they don't stick. That one stuck a little bit, but that's okay. You can just eat that as a little treat. And it might have been a better idea to grease and flour your cupcake pan. I'm just making a mess of things over here. Oh, see, that one came out. Last one is the charm. It came out perfect. Some of these did stick a little bit, but not bad. And maybe the trick is to letting them cool a little bit more than 10 minutes. But that's all right. They look really good. They look like cornbread, but they're not cornbread. They are, in fact, golden vanilla cupcakes. If you wanted a batter that is more white, you could just not use the egg yolks in the recipe, and they would be a little bit lighter in color. The honey changes the color a little bit too, as opposed to white sugar. But they look really good, and they're not all the same size at all. So if you're looking for an amazing, professional looking cupcake that they are all identical, you won't find that here. And that is just fine. I make homemade food that tastes good, that looks homemade. So my cupcakes are cooling off. They're almost all the way cooled off. So I'm going to start on my buttercream. And I finally got some pastry bags that are reusable, that are what I like. This one's a little bit bigger than probably what I'll need today, but such a good size for other things. And then I already had a whole bunch of tips from other pastry bags that I used to have. And so this one is just a little star tip. I'll find out for sure what size and what kind of star this is. But I just push it down all the way. And then I always put my pastry bag in a cup just to make it so you have two hands to scrape in your buttercream or frosting or whatever you're putting on your cupcakes. So I've got 2 cups plus 2 tablespoons of really soft butter. I'm just going to pour it in my mixer here. And you also don't have to have a stand mixer for this, but I'm going to be whipping it for a good solid 5 minutes. It just makes it easier so you can walk away. So we want this to be really light and fluffy, very similar to the batter and pale in color. And this is a lot more butter, so it may take a little bit longer than 5 minutes. Once your butter starts to mix and get really smooth like this, I'm going to turn the speed up to high, and then we'll go for about 5 minutes. Some of my butter is up here at the top, so I'm just going to scrape down just a little bit. It's only been like half a minute, but I want to make sure all of my butter gets in the bowl. Now we'll go on high speed for 5 minutes. After about 3 minutes, I'm going to scrape down the bowl. With this much butter, it tends to go a little higher. But I also just want to make sure that I've got everything on the bottom getting whipped in. And I'm going to whip on high speed for another 2 minutes. You can see how much paler in color it is. It's really light and fluffy. It's why you want room temperature butter that is not melting. If it was melted, it wouldn't whip up like this. If at any point you feel like your butter is too soft, even during this whipping process, you can just stick it in the fridge and give it a few minutes. But I'm going to scrape the bowl down. It's been a long time since she's interrupted me. So I'm going to scrape down the bowl, and then I'm going to start adding in my chilled egg and honey mixture. And it's really cool. And then this will also help to keep the butter firm if you feel like your butter is too soft. So on low speed, I'm just going to add in a little bit at a time. And I'm going to give it a good mix before I start whipping it on high speed, just to make sure I've got all the bits that kind of went up to the top of the mixer. So I'm going to mix on high speed for probably about another minute or two. I don't know if you could see the little flecks of vanilla in there. And you could do this with a hand mixer, but it is quite a bit. And so you'll see it's really handy to have a stand mixer, but you could do it with a hand mixer. And if you feel like it's too much at one time with a hand mixer, you could do it in 2 batches. But I'm just going to give it a really good scrape. Make sure everything on the bottom is mixed in. You don't want any big chunks of butter that didn't get whipped in. And if it's a hot day, you might need to put this in the fridge. And if you're having something like an outdoor party and it's warm, this will melt. So you don't want to have them sitting out for a long time in hot weather. And it hardens up so nice in the fridge too. But everything is looking really good. So bring over my pastry bag. If you don't have a pastry bag, you could just use a Ziploc bag. And that's not all of it, but it's all that I'm going to put in right now. And then very tightly twist your bag. And you want it to squish down. And if you don't feel like you can maintain a twist at the same time, you could always use a clip or a rubber band or something like that. If you have a little bowl scraper or even a bench scraper, just to make sure you've got it all into the bag, that's helpful too. On the same plate that my butter was on, you can just do a little test run. Make sure you've got the right consistency. Make sure it's the way you want it to look. And if you need to put your frosting down, the cup is handy. And you could do whatever design you want. If you feel like one is not exactly what you'd like it to be, just start over. And then the easiest way, for whatever design you're making, is to just go straight above it . And you want to apply firm, even pressure while you're piping. So pretty. And such a hand workout, by the way. Retwist your bag as needed. What a hand workout. You have to have a strong hand. But they look really pretty. And if you have some ends that don't look amazing, you just tuck them in with your spatula. Remember, these are homemade. We are not a famous bakery. And because they don't have papers on them, you could just put them in a little paper, a little cupcake liner. I know they have liners now that are really pretty and decorative, but you can do whatever you want. But they look really good. I'll take this little short one here, and let's get a knife and see what it looks like. It looks really good. And my cupcakes have a little bit of raggedy bottoms where they stuck a little bit, but that's okay. I've never met anybody that has ever made a cake or cupcakes that haven't stuck in the pan at least once. Let's taste the cake just by itself. Nothing fancy at all. It's just a plain vanilla cupcake with plain vanilla frosting, but still one of my favorites. So good. And so easy to make. It won't take you as long to make these as it took me, because you won't be talking for a couple of hours before you make them. And they really look so pretty. Of course, you could use whatever piping tip that you want and get a different design. This is one of my favorite piping tips because they look like little roses. And if you were to do a 2 or 3 layer cake and then just do the little rosebuds or the little rose pattern all the way around, it makes such a pretty cake. But perfect for cupcakes. And I think they look really good. I think they taste really good. If you haven't made this buttercream yet, I encourage you to try it. It really is so good. Thank you so much. I'm already gonna cry. Whew. It's gonna take another 2 hours to get through the ending if I keep going on like this. But thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for sharing in this last year with me. Please continue to share with your friends and your family. Share on your social media. Let me know when you make these recipes. I love to hear how it turns out when you guys try my recipes, and let me know what you think. I want to make sure that I'm giving you guys a good recipe, that you like it. I should turn this around so you can see. And thank you to those that have been there from the beginning, when I only had about 20 views a video and maybe 200 subscribers. Very, very humble beginning. And thank you again so much to Trent and Allie for introducing a lot of you to my channel and introducing us and helping you to find me and me to find you, so I can share in all of these things that I've learned. But thank you so much for sharing in this last year with me. Thank you so much to my patrons for your continued support. It is so amazing to me how awesome you guys all are. This channel wouldn't be what it is without all of you watching. But I'm so excited for the next year to come. I have so many recipes to share, and my cookbook is almost ready. So look forward to that very soon. Any day now, it will be coming. But thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.